Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Spa. One last time in the opening rounds of the PCA Sim Racing Series 14 here at the Belgian circuit. We've already had 3 of our splits. Time for the challenge class to get underway in the Porsche Club of America Sim Racing Series for season 14 before we roll on and get this season properly underway, changing tracks and going to Watkins Glen for each 4 of our splits next week. It's myself, Ewan O'Leary, and Ron Mounds bringing you the action from the commentary box here tonight, with Romero Augustin Cisneros behind the cameras as always. Of course, as always in 2025, we're delighted to have Princess Cruises on board as our title sponsor. As the official cruise vacation partner of Series 13, they provide exclusive offers, including world-leading itineraries across a fleet of 16 elegant ships sent to more than 330 global destinations. Reach out to the PCA concierge team to book your next adventure today by calling 833-679-2188. Well, it's the opening part of a new season, Ron, and this is the final round to get underway. The challenge class getting underway ahead of a varied schedule in season 14.
Yeah, this is a very odd sentence to say, but we're in the final season opener here in the PCA world for this season, but it's another formidable event here at Spa. I saw last week in some of these events how challenging of a combination this was for these racers to try and just shake the dust off, get themselves back into a groove of running here in this 7-round championship. You got to hit the ground and hit it running this season. So with 7 rounds for these racers to try and tackle a whole lot of challenging racetracks thrown into the mix as well, this is just another part of what is going to be a rather tough adventure for these racers if they want to try and seal their deal when it comes to winning championships.
And there's 7 rounds to do that, of course. The 3 who were at the top of last season's championship are not here because they've all been moved up to the sport class, which kicked off last night with William Wolf taking a very dominant victory. Well over a second clear of the field in qualifying, and that was certainly reflected in the race as well, won by nearly a half minute. We'll see whether it's a bit closer tonight. You'd imagine it is. 11th of September, today's date, 33 degrees Celsius down on the circuit. That's 91 Fahrenheit for those of you who need the translation. 10 degrees Celsius higher, you're welcome, higher than the ambient that we have. It is early September, and we were talking about this a little bit last night, Ron, actually, in the sport class, and I'm sure you were last week as well. The weather conditions here, not searingly warm, and actually because this is a September to December season, it's only going to get cooler from here, especially with the schedule not going into the southern hemisphere and turning things on its head. It's very much staying rather cool, and this might be the warmest day we get.
Yeah, that's a very good point that you raised, talking about the track temperatures. I mean, I know from my experience, I'd flash my mind back to a couple of months ago where I would do a broadcast and it would just feel like I was doing a show from inside a sauna. I've gotten to the point for myself in real life where I can do these shows with the windows open, which is not very good news for my neighbors trying to sleep, but it is good for me to try and stay a little bit cool. But as we get a little bit farther along in this year, I think we're going to have the opposite end of the worries when it comes to tire temperatures. Not gonna have to worry about them getting too hot. Instead, we're gonna have to worry about them being a bit on the cold end. I look well farther along at the end of this season at VIR. It's a track that I'm the closest to in terms of the ones that we're visiting this season. I think it's actually split between VIR and Indy, but either way, VIR in December, that's going to be rather chilly. So we are going to see a consistent fall off in tire temperatures, which can be a blessing and a curse. They won't have to worry about the tires cooking themselves, but at the same time, cold tires, sometimes it's actually even worse than having too hot tires.
And as ever with these broadcasts, you're able to teach me more about American geography every time, or at least that the PCA is with all the regions and whatever. I learn more and more. This is Vernon Messer not having a great time. Oh my word, that's a big crash. We'll do well to better that here.
And he's still there.
No, definitely not. He's still pinned on the throttle as well. I think that's a driver who's lost control of their wheel and pedals, if I'm honest. There's Ben Whitehurst, who's decidedly got control of his, and thank goodness for that. What I was going to say is that Vernon Messer is the highest placed driver from season 13, returning in the challenge class this season. We saw last night the top 3, as I've already mentioned, George Poulos, Alan Hales, and Joshua Jepperson all taking part in the sport class last night in the opening round of the series, although Will Wolf took a dominant victory. Jepperson finished second. It was a good run out, actually, for the 3 challenge class drivers. Vernon Messer, the best placed of those who were in the challenge class last season, back again this season. Ed Trippett is here as well. They finished 4th and 5th last season. And you'd think with the system we have here in the PCA of those best drivers sort of moving on up every season, you'd think that allows the likes of Messer and Trippett maybe to sort of move themselves up as well in this challenge series, and they'll surely be going for the championship this season.
Oh, that they certainly will. And here in a championship as short as this one is, only 7 rounds for these racers between now and the very end of the season. This series will be the last one that we have broadcasted from this season here in the PCA world. So it may be a lot of time in terms of the months that go by, but not a lot of time at all in terms of doing well in these races as we take a look at the mess that Vernon Messer made of his car in that moment down to Pouhon. That right there was a terrible joke. I apologize.
Won't be the last. There he is, cartwheeling through the gravel. Bodywork flying off and all sorts. As I say, I'm pretty sure he did not have control of that car, and that's why he so violently went straight on into the wall. Les Carmichael has set the best lap time currently in this qualifying session. Was second place in practice, which is just a half hour before the qualifying session opens here in PCA sessions. So you may notice from last season a little bit earlier than we used to be getting these sessions underway. Pretty sure we used to be half an hour earlier, but maybe I'm half an hour later, sorry. And last season we were, but there you go, 8:30 Eastern time to start this season as we go on board with Ed Trippett here and really get a feel here for what a Porsche Cup car is like around Spa, because it's not too much of a difference. In fact, it looks very different. Looks very similar, sorry, to the GT3 Porsche, but certainly handles very different, as maybe we'll see a little bit more of throughout the race itself.
Yeah, it may look rather similar from the outside, but it is a completely different beast on the internals. You've got a lot of different stuff to have to worry about with these cars. Slightly larger fuel tank, although the fuel limits have been changed for this season. I think it's gone down from 70% for last season to 65 for this season. I'll have to do the math in my head to figure out exactly how many liters that works out in terms of the amount of gas these racers can put in. But the cars themselves drive a little bit differently. These Porsche Cup cars have a bit more of an edge to them compared to their GT3 counterparts. The GT3 cars, in an odd sense, I could best describe as basically being a nice cuddly teddy bear. The Cup cars, on the other hand, it's a teddy bear, but there's also a little bit of dynamite inside of it. So it's still soft and cuddly if you hold it the right way, but if not, you're probably going to walk away with, at the very least, some fringed eyebrows.
It's a good description of the difference between these 2 cars as Trippett goes to the top. That's close. A tenth and a half between the top 3. Good news for our race, and that's going to be the end of it for Trippett, I think. He's not going to get round again with crossing the line there. Now, one of the final drivers to come across the line is going to be Jeffrey Block, who is 3rd at the moment. Not sure where Les Carmichael is. Not that far behind, actually. Just coming through Les Com at the moment. There's Block, and Carmichael just a little bit further behind. So it's going to be up to those 2 to try and overtake Ed Trippett, because, as I say, Trippett is not going to get a final chance to come across the line again. That was his only lap time of the session so far, and it will be his only lap time by the end as well, because 10 minutes around here leaves you very little time to actually get your laps in.
And you know, myself and our RaceSpotTV colleague, Mr. Joe Peak, were talking about this a lot throughout the 2 races last week. Here in this qualifying session, there's no real shot that you have to lollygag around. As soon as that green flag came out in this qualifying session, these racers had to go out there on the racetrack and start running around. It is not a short racetrack. This lap time's firmly inside the 2.5 minute bracket at 2:24.8 as our provisional pole time. So not a lot of wiggle room for these racers. They need to hit the ground and hit the ground running in this session to just have as many opportunities as they can to do well. A track like Spa, it's one that a lot of people, pretty much everybody on iRacing, has extensive experience running around, but at the same time, that level of experience can be a blessing and a curse. It can lead to a little bit of overconfidence at certain points in time, so these racers would benefit from having more lap times, as we see Jeffrey Block at his way down into the final chicane for the last time in this session. Only about 20 seconds left on the clock, Ewan, and let's see if the driver of the 389 car can jump his way up from third, maybe even onto that front row, possibly onto the pole.
Is there going to be some late drama in the final 15 seconds here as Block comes up to the line? There is going to be some late drama. If it counts, it's going to be pole, and it is for Jeffrey Block. Now, what about Les Carmichael, who's not going to be too far behind? Oh, and it go! Wow, well, look at that! 1,000ths of a second. That is extraordinary. Just with a couple of seconds remaining in the session, Les Carmichael takes pole. That is an extraordinary qualifying session. We've saved the best till last here from Spa in the Porsche Club America Sim Racing Series 14. What a great end to that session. It's 1,000th of a second between those two who exchanged the pole twice in those final 15 seconds.
Bravo to the both of them. That was absolutely incredible. And I'll tell you what a way to get the season up and rolling. We haven't even gone into the race that lies ahead, and we already have 1,000th of a second being the gap between our front row sitters. 1,000th of a second around a 2.5 minute long lap and a very long racetrack. That is absolute insanity. Shows you how impressive these racers can be. That is just, I keep saying it a lot. I'll say it a lot throughout the show. That's awesome. I don't care who you are. That's cool.
It's a stark difference to yesterday. If you were with us for yesterday's stream in the sport class, we're going to see the pole lap in a moment, by the way, just when it's loaded up in this warm-up session. But yeah, if you're with us, and here it is indeed, right on cue. Ramiro's on the buttons quickly for us to have a look at this pole lap. But yeah, the pole difference yesterday was over a second between 1 and 2. It's 1,000th of a second here in the challenge class. What an extraordinary couple of moments that was. Here it is then, Les Carmichael's pole lap through turn 1, looking for that late apex before that run down the hill in towards Eau Rouge and Radion. This 2:24.460 he goes over the top of the hill, just looking to not get an off track and a slowdown over there, to be honest, Ron. That's going to be a big feature in the race as well, of course. But this middle sector, really where it's won and lost as well, although the first one and third, of course, very important in their own right as well.
And here in this series, having open setups in this season as well, can see a little bit of disparity between the way the cars are heading off through those final and first sectors. But here in the mid part through the time twisties, that's where the time can be made or lost, as we see Carmichael head his way off through was, in my book, the most challenging turn around this racetrack. Yeah, that may be slightly sacrilegious, I know, but turn number 8 of Ravage, that downhill, seemingly never-ending right-hander. You've got so much to worry about there. The track falling away from you. The track also feels like it falls away from you the farther wide you run heading off through there. Super tough corner to try and nail down. Heading off in a couple of moments time into the Fagnes section of turn number 12 and 13. Another real tough bit of racetrack, and one of the many alterations that was made to this track in recent time. And you can see just the point that I was going to raise. The gravel traps on the outside there are going to loom like a scary wind turbine that you can see through your window in the morning whenever it's foggy in the Midwest. But with the gravel all around that bit of the racetrack, and even heading off through these corners right there on Stavelo down onto this back not so straight straightaway, if you have, like, come time for the end of this race, if you have a lot of off-track moments for many a racer up and down the grid, which not too uncommon considering these racers still looking to shake the dust off and shake the rust off, I should say, you're probably going to see those bits of the track look more like a rally special stage than anything else. So look at this track to maybe turn into a giant rallycross configuration later on tonight.
Yeah. It didn't happen so much last night, but we've already seen it in practice and qualifying here, so it may well be the case that that is going to be the case a little bit later on. Here's the warm-up session now as everybody gets out. Well, say everybody, a few drivers get out there on the circuit and run together. This is Bailey James Schommer with Johan Nye, I think, in the orange and black. He certainly had a similar livery last season. We'll see where he is along with the rest of the grid here in a moment as we have a look at the starting grid ready for this race. It's Les Carmichael, who takes the pole ahead of Jeffrey Block on the front row. Block's 16th place in the standings last season, starting with a front row start here, ahead of Ed Trippett, who at the end of last season was 5th. Bailey James Sommer then rounds out the first 2 rows with just over a second off a pole for Dave Jones and Alex Lidback. The first 2 over a second off. Robert Gallish is 7th, ahead of Andrew Hillman in 8th position. Gallish finishing in 12th place in the standings last season. By the way, Johan Knight is indeed in 9th place, ahead of Anthony Di Vincenzo, 15th place in last season's campaign. Besseldo podium at Portimao, second round of the season. Chris Jankovic will be in 11th, ahead of Adam Holland, who starts 1.7 seconds off the pole. James Legel and Jonathan Sasportas will start at 13th and 14th, but the gaps do start to get a little bit larger down here. Sean Bailey rounds out the top 15 with John Kaplan 16th place in the Northeast region. Andy McCune will be 17th, but of Vernon Messer, who had those technical difficulties in the opening session there. He'll have to start from the back alongside those others who didn't qualify. David Suntry, Bruce Farroby, Thomas Dougherty, Ben Whitehurst and Jack Stevenson, who round out the field in 23 strong field it is. The drivers will pull themselves up onto the back straight then, or just before the bus stop chicane I should say, and get themselves ready for that all-important run down towards turn 1, but some very, very big gaps there, Ron, and about a third of the field not actually able to get a lap in because of the things we've already talked about.
Yeah, and with that drama that we saw in that solo session a little bit earlier on, with those racers starting a bit farther towards the back, I wonder how that's going to change their general strategy as to how you tackle this race. You think of Spa, you think of the drama that can go down heading off into turn number 1, even though we're running a rolling start here in the Porsche Club of America, it is still going to cause a big stack up down into La Source at the start of this race. If you're a driver a little bit farther behind, it's a good opportunity to maybe get some moves done if you're feeling brave, but it's also a good spot just to pick up the pieces in case anybody else comes to blows heading off through that exact same part of the racetrack. We've already seen in some of the races leading up to this one, the final season opener here in the Porsche Club of America here for season 14 right at the end of 2025. We're probably going to see a little bit more drama down into turn number 1, especially with some racers who were maybe showing a bit more pace in practice than they got the opportunity to show in that qualifying session. They're going to look to try and impress, and if you're in a situation like that, sometimes judgment can get a little bit clouded. The red mist may take over, even though there's an hour-long race that lies ahead. The mental side of things still going to be a very big, important thing in deciding who's going to come out of this race smelling like a bed of roses and who's going to come out of it smelling like a bucket of raw eggs.
Well, it's 23 of them all ready to go. 22 on the track, but Jack Stevenson hopefully will get underway from the pit lane here in a moment as the final race here from Spa kicks off in the Porsche Club America Sim Racing Series 14 here tonight. It's the challenge class. The final of our openers will be started by Les Carmichael in the 912 on the inside line. Bit of disorganisation in the background. There's going to be a big stack up here as well because Carmichael's waiting quite a long time, and now he goes. He waited right until the last moment there and still caught Jeffrey Block off guard. Ed Trippett's going to be down the inside. There he goes in 444 in towards La Source, very orderly in towards turn 1 itself, and everybody just waiting their turn through La Source for the first time down the other side after the hairpin. Very nice start from the front guys especially.
Yeah, everybody keeping it clean right at the beginning of this race. A little bit surprising, but as they head their way off, Rouge and Radion, who's going to be the first to try and get a move done? Who's going to be the first to nearly go off the track there? You can see some racers already testing the track limits. You raised it a little bit earlier on, Ewan. If you pick up a slowdown there, especially on the first lap, you are done for. But here we go. Trippett and Block in a battle hard.
Trippett stays ahead, and round the outside, Andrew Hillman, very close to going off the circuit. Schomer in the background, not able to stay alongside, or is he? No, has a look, but can't quite do it. Dave Jones then 6th place, just in behind. And next in line, Alex Lidback and Anthony Di Vincenzo, who round out the top 8. Oh, very wide up in front there. Was that Carmichael from the lead? Maybe it was. And Carmichael invites the pressure from Ed Trippett, who only got 1 lap in qualifying, and maybe is showing himself to be faster than maybe where he qualified.
Yeah, so Ed Trippett doing a fantastic job in that qualifying session earlier on to keep those cards to his chest, but there's Carmichael around.
Oh, he's on the outside of Piron as well. He's not going to be able to get going. Oh, not without some big danger there. Everybody just squeaks through. And my goodness, that was close. Carmichael gets back underway. There were some spinners further back. 4 drivers already with delays, and this might be some of the reason. David Sauntry, went side by side with somebody there in towards Eau Rouge and Radion, and somebody hit the wall very, very hard indeed. Dankovic has actually gone off live as well, but Sauntry there involved in something we didn't want to see on the opening lap of this race, but was bound to happen to somebody. This is what happened to Dankovic. Got very much spun around into the gravel there through Piff-Paff.
An unfortunate moment for many a racer at the start of this race, but that was the biggest kick in the shins for Les Carmichael. Looked like he just had a bit of a wiggle down into the turn, but as that went on a few moments ago, the battling up at the front is absolute pandemonium. They were packed 2 by 2 as they headed their way off into the final 2 turns. Ed Trippett going to lead the first lap of this race, as much as he has a half a second gap to himself and Jeffrey Block. That really doesn't set the scene for what is going to be close to contact and disaster. It's a 1.
That was way too late on the brakes from Jeffrey Block there, and he was pretty lucky not to hit Trippett into the first corner. And that's Dave Jones immediately alongside him here on the way towards Eau Rouge, and Block is just going to get in front. Dave Jones just breathes out the throttle and allows him in to go over the top of the hill. Hillman has already got a black flag in this race, unfortunately for him, so we'll try and get some word through on what that was for. But second place, that's not ideal. And there he goes over the top of the hill. That might be the answer. Schommer goes straight through, and, well, maybe not actually. Bailey James Schommer, though, does go down the inside and through into second place.
As we did not see the drama off into turn number 1 that I was necessarily expecting, Yoon, but the rest of that first lap rather hectic for these drivers. And now as we get a little bit farther up along, we have that drama once again. That's Dave Jones with a huge lockup down to turn number 8. He's going to drop down like a stone thrown into a pond. Now side by side racing between himself and Alex Lidback as they head their way off into Speaker's corner of turn 9. And that's Dave Jones in the 313, dropping his way down into 7th, maybe at risk of losing out on even more spots if he has some lockups. But that has been something that we've seen a lot of already in this race, and it goes back to what we've raced in qualifying. The differences between these Porsche Cup cars and their GT3 counterparts. One of the things that makes it a teddy bear with dynamite on the inside is the fact that these cars do not have ABS. So if you want to get rolled up, especially with the heavy braking zones that we've got around here, you don't have any anti-lock braking system. You've got to feather that brake pedal and pray to God that one of your front tires doesn't get turned into a rectangle.
Yeah, and last night, I don't know about the week before previous, but, you know, we saw a lot actually on the traction control side of things being more of a problem than actually the locking up of the front tyres. They tried to get things slowed down. It was getting on the power that was the real problem in these cars, especially out of the final corner. A couple of other places as well, that was close. Adam Holland trying to go around the outside of Johan Nye, and that is not the place to do it, perhaps. James Legault will get close as well into this final chicane. Hillman has spun around, I think. There's smoke. He's dropping down the places, and that's somebody. It's Dave Jones who's stopped. Hillman's gone off himself as well through turn 5. Jones is stopped on the inside. He doesn't want to rejoin directly into the path of anybody, and so drops all the way to 18th.
And once again, a lockup for Dave Jones, and I would have a feeling it had to have been the inside front. That had to have been what happened as he headed his way down in there. It was the exact same tire that he would have locked up a few moments beforehand, and that's a car off the track heading off through turn number 1. I think that's a 59. Yeah, Thomas Doherty and another driver involved in that. That's looking through, yeah, there you can see Doherty involved in all of that. And I think Sean Bailey got a piece of that drama in the 999 machine. So more drama going on at this point. You know how I said that it was a very tame start? You can take that, throw it into a wood chipper.
Schommer puts the pressure onto Ed Trippett as they complete the third lap and get onto the fourth. This is what happened to Jones. Just as you were saying it, the front's locking up. Stopping power not quite as good anyway. Oh, and Doherty's going to find that out as well. Oh, no! Doherty misses his braking point and clips somebody else on the way in towards La Source. Tried his best to avoid, but in the end just got that all wrong. and went to the inside, made a big error there, and yeah, that's going to be a costly one, not only on the circuit, but maybe in the steward's room as well.
Yeah, that's probably going to result in some sort of penalty. I'm sure that race control is going to have a thorough look at that. But yet again, the brakes proving to be the biggest challenge for these racers. You know, if we broke down all of the season openers here in the PCA sim racing world here at the start of season 14, you could probably categorize each race and see the drivers running into their various challenges and various difficulties trying to tackle this race, whether it be the pro and club races last week or the sports race last night and the challenge event here tonight. Many a racer finding their own difficulties to get back into the groove. As you could see, Sean Bailey has some pretty significant damage. I think his front right tire briefly was broken off, but did pop right back on. So even though it did pop off like a misshapen Lego, he's back out there on the racetrack, albeit still with a... Oh, is that Trippett spinning?
Ed Trippett from the lead spins and he hits the wall, trying to get back going again as well. I mentioned it out of the final corner. That's where the traction is most likely to break away. And Ed Trippett loses the lead out of that. He drops to 5th. As Block, DiVincenzo and Lidback go through, as well as Schommer, who's gained all of those places to now lead this race just 8 minutes in. There goes Hillman into the pit lane, by the way, after his penalty. So it's all happening at the front of this field, but Belly James Schommer has sidestepped it all and now leads this race after gaining 3 places from the start.
And speaking of drivers making their way through the field like a hot knife through butter, he's well farther back from where he started, obviously, but Les Carmichael, he's managed to jump his way all the way up to P12 in that 912 car. Keep an eye on him to maybe shock the world and get some more moves done. And speaking of getting a move done, that's Ed Trippett trying to sweep around the outside of the number 11 machine of Alex Lidback. He gets that move done to jump his way up into P4 in the 444 machine. But no, that 912 car of Les Carmichael, he's only, I say only, but he's only 16 and a half-ish seconds back of your race leader, of Bailey James Schommer. So keep an eye on him to maybe shock the world. It was a big spin at the start of this race, but he learned the limits right away, and I think he knows what that car is like under him. So keep an eye on that car to maybe pull off a shot comeback. Could even just be a top 5. I'm not going to shoot for the moon yet, but could still be a very good night for him.
Well, there's still a long way to go. 51 minutes left in this race. Bruce Proby goes a bit wide through Stavolo. And this is the gravel that you were talking about, going to be brought back onto the circuit. This is how it happens. That's Adam Holland, who has been black flagged in the meantime, but in this replay, makes slight contact with the wall. And this is what happened to Trippett. Slightly tighter line on the entry there, and maybe that just played a role there as he was still a little bit more, had a little bit more steering lock on as he was hitting the accelerator there.
And, you know, I think one other contributing factor in that spin for Ed Trippett, at least from that replay, it looked like that car was bouncing around a teeny tiny bit. As we said a little bit earlier on in the show, open setups allowed for these racers, so they can do whatever sort of setup trickery that they want to. And if they maybe stiffen up that car a little bit too much, especially if you whack the curb on the inside of that final turn as you head your way onto the start-finish straightaway, maybe a little bit trickier to try and pin that throttle down. I remember from my karting days, whether it be some of the newer chassis that I had or the last kart that I had, which was older than I am, I remember that kart was rather difficult to try and tune. Let me try that one again. The suspension, so important around a racetrack like this. You think of Spa and it's like, oh yeah, this is just a track where you need that muscle, you need the power down these straightaways, but there's still a whole lot of corners around this track, and every single one of them can be important in these races. Keep that car under you, keep it on the road, keep it clean as well, and you can come out of this race smelling like a bed of roses. So for these drivers, they kind of have to find a fine margin of, okay, what will work best on the straightaways, what's going to also help me through the corners, and finding that balance is something that I think we have seen some racers maybe miss thus far tonight when it comes to the setups.
That looks like Hillman's gravel there. They just went through another example of that being brought back onto the circuit again. In the background, you can see Werner Messer, by the way, in the grey, up to 8th place so far. A great start from Messer, who had those technical difficulties in qualifying. Clearly those have gone away. Up 10 places so far, and based on practice times and the results of last season, where Messer managed to get a podium finish at Canadian Tire Motorsports Park, most notably, along with a load of other top 5s and top 10s. This is a good drive so far from one of the pre-season favourites. Up 10 into 8th, only less than 12 minutes in.
And despite the fact he started well farther in the back of the pack in these 1 hour long races, especially at the pit stops that we will definitely talk about a little bit later on here tonight, there are so many opportunities for you to side your way back through the field that he already has done up to this point. So Vernon Messer, certainly on our radar of drivers looking to have a very good race to kick this season off. It's going to be a short run through to the end of it. So with only 7 rounds, these racers can't really afford to have a bad night. You look at a driver like Vernon Messer, start all the way at the back, and probably with some sort of screen freeze or some sort of technical dilemma like that caused him to crash in qualifying a little bit earlier on. But either way, he's managed to make his way up into the top 10, holds on to that P8 spot. Keep an eye on him, and also keep an eye on that final driver inside the top 10. Now, Les Carmichael, after that disastrous spin at the very beginning of this race, about halfway through the first lap after starting from the pole, by just 1,000th of a second, he looks to try and make his way through the field once again. A black flag in the air for Thomas Dougherty. Lots of black flags already in this race, and now I'm not sure whether or not we've gotten any word from race control that these are race control issued penalties, as here we go and dive into one.
That's a very sharp dive as well. Pretty narrow on the inside, and Dankovic does indeed get through into 11th. So that was not a bad dive down the inside, but very narrow on the inside, and she made it work in the end. Kaplan next in line, then Dave Jones. Here it is again. Quite late, really. I don't think it was predetermined, actually, but did just slip through on the inside into 11th, and Kaplan forced to drop back into 12th, with Dave Jones now hounding him, although couldn't quite get through on the way towards Lecombe that time. This is Robert Gallis, who's looking behind him again, Johan Nye, and they're less than a second behind him now, as well as Vernon Messer. So Messer has made all that progress and still going here, now joining this group that's actually headed by Alex Lidback for the final spot inside the top 5.
As we saw that move attempted and made successful by Chris Strankovic as he headed his way off into turn number 1, and still keeping tabs on these racers duking it out. It is just absolute insanity up and down the grid. I was just going to say, that move that we saw off into turn 1, the way that I usually describe something like that, it is a candy bar overtake. It's like going into the shops, being in the line to the cashier, and then you just see the candy bars on the side, and you're like, you know what, may as well just grab a $2 bar of Kit Kat off the rack, as we see a bad moment there, running off into the gravel through Speaker's Corner. So as much as he got that candy bar move done down into turn number 1, I think it may have had something that he was allergic to as he dropped down.
It's all movement back there. It's the midfield that provided so much entertainment last night as well in the opening round of the sport class. It's down into the bus stop chicane. This is further up front. Johan Nye on a bit of a defensive line there from Vernon Messer. Not 100% sure why, actually. Messer just gets a better exit immediately here. Chased off to the outside of the road. Just about got an overlap there, and before La Source. And will break later. Will he just go all the way round here? It's a very wide line, but Knight keeps himself very tight to the inside as well. Messer's not quite going to get as good of a run, though, and he's going to have to wait for the Kemmel Straight now before he tries to make his move.
You know, of all the times that you're like, I didn't get the move done, I guess I gotta wait for the next opportunity. There's a rather quick opportunity that comes next, but I'm not sure if he will be able to get it done. So you can see the distance ballooning out between some of those cars. But here we go, side by side down the Kemmel straightaway, off into the Lecombe chicane. Who's gonna get it done? Will it be Johan Nye making it work? It will be Johan Nye making it work, even with a bit of an awkward curb run through the second part of that chicane. The curbs on these cars, you think, oh, they're sports cars, they could probably handle the curbs rather well, and they can certainly handle them better than an open wheeler, but you still hit them in an odd way around this track, and your car can either get very upset with you and damage itself, or you could get very upset and probably end up in the wall. Those curves, it's a love-hate relationship that you gotta have with them in these race cars to do well.
Absolutely. This Messer just backs away before Pouhon really doesn't want to get too close to Lidback on the way down the hill there. He's giving himself that little bit of room now through this middle sector. So come into Piff Paff that has been so strewn with gravel at times in this race, but racing line has cleared quite nicely and quite quickly since the earlier moments of off-track excursions. Same here as well at Stavelot. It does seem to me since the update that the gravel has been slightly less prominent, but maybe it's just my eyes. So they come out of that section now where it is liable for gravel ending up on the circuit, and now Lidback, well, again looking, just checking the mirrors again with Messer behind. Galesh and Nye not long having gotten through. Lidback will want to make sure that this is not a recurring theme in the next few moments as they break again for the bus stop chicane. Nye doesn't look particularly much quicker than Lidback, I've got to say, and certainly not much quicker than Messer either. They're all starting to get even closer, as is the race lead. Schommer and Block now nose to tail.
Yeah, Jeffrey Block has been able to keep Schommer honest up at the front. They've been going tit for tat when it comes to laps, and you can see how close those racers are as they head their way up through Eau Rouge and Radion. I will say, though, touching on the point that you raised a few moments ago, Ewan, I think you may be onto something. I remember a couple of seasons ago doing some broadcasts at Brands Hatch, for instance, and Turn 2, heading off through there would just be it would be completely covered in gravel to the point where you would see more gravel out there on the track than you would see the actual racetrack itself. I think iRacing has done well to kind of limit that, make sure that the gravel can get slowly moved out of the way. It can still be a bit of a trouble spot if you head off into a turn, hoping that you have a lot of grip, and instead you just have a big pile of kitty litter on the apex, but it's still not anywhere near as bad as it was a couple of seasons ago. Well done to the people at iRacing, kind of making sure that those brand new off-track physics that they brought in not too long ago here in the sim can still continue to evolve. As a couple of seasons ago, the outside of turn number 9 probably would have been caked in gravel, as we just saw Andrew Hillman get a very easy overtake done with a spin down to 1.
Very wide entrance into Piff Paff for Schommer. Uses that little bit of curb on the left-hand side to just allow a little bit more space. Jeffrey Block just following the wheel tracks really at the moment, a little bit wider from Schommer there, just a hiccup of gravel. And now Block will get the better exit as a result, and not maybe the place you want it coming in towards Blanchimont, but it's better there than nowhere as they come to the fast left-hander. What about when they get to the bus stop chicane itself? As they fly through the left-hander, it doesn't look like Block is close enough here. He continues to just probe the race leader though.
You can see those two racers. It doesn't seem like 7/10 of a second when they're so close together distance-wise, heading all through that final chicane, but still keeping eyes on this battle. Keeping eyes on this battle for P5 as well, as we have done for a pretty lengthy period of time up to this point. These racers have given us a good one to talk about in the season opener. I've certainly seen many a racer get bit by the challenge. I think I just saw your P3 runner of Anthony DiVincenzo have a moment of his own down into turn number 1. He looked painfully slow on exit as that gap, and just my quick little spiel here, has gone from about 3.2 seconds to the other front two to now about 4. So shows you how things can quickly change for you here heading around Spa. That exit at turn number 1, probably one of, if not the most important corner of the entirety of this season. I can't really think of another corner, with maybe the exception of Oak Tree at VIR for the final race of the season, heading onto that massively long back straightaway, that will have nearly as much importance as the first turn at Spa has done up to this point.
Just gone 20 minutes now in this final opener, if that makes sense, of the Porsche Club America Sim Racing Series for season 14. And to remind you, of course, that we're delighted to have Princess Cruises as the 2025 PCA title sponsor. As the official cruise vacation partner of Series 13 and 14, they provide exclusive offers, including world-leading itineraries across a fleet of 16 elegant ships and into more than 330 global destinations. Reach out to the PCA concierge team to book your next adventure today by calling 833-679-2188. Well, just under 40 minutes gone. Those first 20 have gone very quickly. And maybe Werner Messer wouldn't be feeling the same, but he's certainly been productive with those first 20 minutes. In the last 10 or so, he's not made much progress, but it's been a very, very good start for him. And now he's starting to find that as you go further up the field, the overtakes do get more difficult.
Yeah, at this point, it's feeling harder and harder for Vernon Messer to get these overtakes done. But, you know, he's still made some tremendous progress up to this point in the race. And even if he's saying, you know what, at this point in time, I'm not sure if I can get this done. Let me just stay in the coattails in the number 11 of Alex Lidback right in front, get some good fuel numbers, and come time for that strategy talk a little bit later on in this race. Once that pit window opens, we start to see racers make those honest calls to come down pit lane to make it to the end of this race. That could be when we start to see Messer come into his own, as that right there was Lidback running a little bit deep down to the first part of that chicane, as that's a spinner a little bit farther behind. A very forced pit entry. I think that's James Leagold who's got to come down pit lane, but here we go down the inside into turn number 1. Vernon Messer's going to go. Will it be a move from the driver, the number 56 on the 11? They're close to making contact through the turn, and now it'll be a drag race as they head their way into Rouge and Radion.
Yeah, almost caught himself too tight on the inside at the source there, but gets a good enough exit anyway. And Werner Messer moves up into 7th position. As I mentioned, he had a very good first 12 minutes or so, but he's rather ground to a halt in the last 10. But he has made an overtake again now. As we have a look again at some more replays. Bruce Froby, locking up in a big way down into the bus stop chicane. No ABS in these, and David Stuntry maybe slightly off put by what was going on in front, and oh dear, goes off as well. Might have even got beached on the curb, I'm not sure, but seemed to be a little bit unsighted and didn't quite, broke late himself, went very, very wide, locks up, and sort of weirdly gets parked here on the curbing on the inside. This is James Lego, who you saw from the top 10 a few moments ago, clips the inside curb and goes for a half spin. And as you say, was that an enforced pit entry? Well, had to think about it, but didn't decide to come in the end. And actually might not have been the worst idea, because I think the pit window will have been open by that point.
Yeah, I think his tires would have probably been happy about that call, because they were probably screaming in agony and turned it to semicircles as a result of that slide heading all through the chicane. I'm not sure if it would have been the smoothest pit entry I would have seen, but it would have been a pretty nice recovery. It's like, you know what? I meant to do this all the time. I just want to get in those extra style points, but an unfortunate moment for him. Still holds on to the final spot inside the top 10 right now and holds on to a significant cushion between himself and Dave Jones. Dave Jones putting on a pretty all-right recovery in the 3:13. We saw him have a series of lockups and a series of spins not too long ago. He's made his way up to P11, so well done to him. We're actually following him as he heads his way off through Stavelot, and another section of racetrack that I will not be too surprised will be just absolutely caked in gravel come time for the end of this race.
There's Dave Jones back to 11th again. Not where he qualified, or indeed where he was running earlier either, but it's a decent run through the field, and Lidback gets back ahead of Werner Messer. So I wonder how that happened into 7th place again. Lidback still not where he qualified either, but Messer had gotten through with relative ease in the end. He is, I think, quite a bit quicker than Lidback, and maybe a few others who are ahead of him right now as well, but it very much seems like Messer has made a mistake, given that that ease of passing through the bus stop chicane on the power. Oh, there you go. Car gets away from him slightly out the final corner.
Yeah, very easy mistake to make, to be sure, but still going to be a bit of a kick in the shins regardless, as we still see this race continue on. Still see these racers trying to shake the dust off each other. I keep saying shake the dust, shake the rust off of their cars, their sim rigs. It's so tricky to try and get back into the swing of things. We had a chat with some racers in the post-race interviews last week, kind of asking them what their mindset was in this opening round of the championship. You know, there are many other racetracks that I would want to be the host of the first race of the season, just for a simple like comfort standpoint, before I would pick Spa. It's like I feel like unless it was Bathurst as the only other option, Spa's the sort of racetrack to kick it off where you feel like you have to test every single part of what you're gonna have to be tested throughout the season. You're gonna have to test your setup building skills. You're gonna have to test your mental fortitude. You're also gonna have to test your qualifying form, your ability to master that strategy, and you gotta master your race form as well. This is a sort of race to kick one of these seasons off that I could best describe as a full body workout, as that was a big moment coming out of the final turn, or coming out of Stavolo, I should say, for Robert Gallus, as Johan Nye just got to blow his doors off coming out of there.
Well, if you make that kind of error, Johan Nye is not going to pass that one up, that's for sure. Finished 8th place in last season's challenge class. Won top 5, and it did come at the first round, so maybe that is a good omen for tonight. It's a top 5 right now as well. As Robert Gallett, oh no, I thought he was coming in there, but no. Just carries on again. Just under 33 minutes to go. We'll certainly have the pit window open now as Bruce Verhoeven gets DQ'd. Now, that has got to be, I think, because of the incident limit. There's no drive-through penalties for incident points anymore. Just a disqualification after 25 incident points. And that'll be quite quickly to go through your 25. It's nearly 1 incident point a minute, but looks like that's what's happened.
Yeah, we did see some racers have trouble earlier on in this race. Multi-car incidents, spins, off-track excursions. I wouldn't 100% rule it out, but that is still a speed run to get to that DQ limit. That is a very unfortunate way to get this season up and rolling for that driver. We'll have to wait 2 weeks until the next round of the championship to make it up, as we take a look at the moment for Bruce in that 130 car. Spun off through Pouan, hit that inside wall, and then there he goes. He gets abducted by that UFO.
That's the end of that. Well, very quick retirement. The only retirement, I'm glad to say, so far. In a few drivers in pit lane, and a few drivers who are definitely going to have to come in again because of damage repairs they've had to make down pit lane. But none quite like that. Only one retirement last night as well, by the way. So we've had good attrition rates this week in the Porsche Club of America, which has been good. And a good battle for the lead tonight as well, unlike last night. Schomer and Block still absolutely nose to tail, although Jeffrey Block has not really made any attempts at going through. Not while we've been watching, and not while we've not been watching. Schomer there goes a little bit deep into Savalo, not for the first time we've seen tonight. And again, Block is just not able to punish.
Yeah, not able to capitalize on those opportunities. Jeffrey Block playing that patient game. Goes back to what I said a little bit earlier on in reference to some racers a little bit farther behind. What do you think the chances are that Jeffrey Block is just happy and content about the spot that he's running in, maybe thinking about some good fuel numbers? Oh, he's got to take advantage of this. He has to. That's a huge lockup from Schomer as he heads his way off through that final chicane. Jeffrey Block will be all around now, side by side, as they head their way on that start-finish straightaway. Block, this is the best opportunity he's had yet, but he is still side by side with Schomer as they head their way down to 1.
Inside line, and Schomer is going to get that place back again, although a very narrow exit, and Block's going to get the exit, chased across to the other side of the road, side by side as they come towards Eau Rouge, and this is where the drama happens. Somebody's going to have to back out, and it's Block this time. Well, that could have been a big moment as they go over the top of Eau Rouge here. Just under half of this race distance gone, and that was the best chance that Block's had for some time at getting past Bentley James Schomer. But the first real attempt is batted away by Schomer quite nicely, and with half an hour gone, keeps the lead in the closest moment we've seen for some time.
Yeah, and yet again, proving that the brakes seemingly being the biggest challenge for these racers thus far tonight. We've seen everybody now, with maybe a handful of exceptions, have a lockup on camera. Been tough for these competitors. Again, I raised this a little bit earlier on. I'll say it yet again. These Porsche Cup cars that we run this season here in the Porsche Club of America, far different than their GT3 competitors. You don't have that ABS. So whenever you have to slam on those brakes, drop the anchors at the end of a very long going flat out blast, when you're going close to terminal velocity, you got to have a lot of trust in your own driving. And for these racers still trying to shake the rust off, that can be a bit tricky. As we see that right there was a pit stop, a driver making that call to come down at pit lane. Already a decent amount of damage on that machine.
Contact, and that is Kaplan and Whitehurst through Lecombe, and immediately Kaplan gives the place back to Ben Whitehurst there. Feels in the red and white that he was at fault barreling down the inside like that, and he might well have been right, but he gives the place back immediately, so there may well be no case to answer there, as again Schomer and Block bring themselves towards Blanchimont now. The fast left-hander. Oh, and a clip on the inside curb that time for Block. He's going to go even further away from the race leader, Bailey James Schomer. Down in towards the final chicane again. And into the pit lane for the race leader. Schomer is into pit lane, and that's an early call for a race leader.
Yeah, that was an early call to come down pit lane, and looked rather iffy on that pit entry with the line that he was running. May have crossed a white line, so we take a look at that moment involving Whitehurst down into the chicane. That was just a messy incident all around for the both of them, but unfortunate stuff as they had their way at the end of that Camel straightaway. But here we go. The race leader, can't say the dominant race leader, we'll just call him the race leader, making that call to come down pit lane. He's joined in the pits by Alex Lidback and Vernon Messer. Those two involved in a very close battle ever since the drop of the green flag, it feels like, as your pole sitter Les Carmichael, after that spin a little bit earlier on, has come down pit lane as well. So a handful of racers making that call to pit, only 4 strong for now, but as Bailey James Schomer comes out of the pits in P8. Now all of our attention lies on this Rocky Mountain region racer in that 389 machine of Jeffrey Block. He holds on to a 5.5 second gap between himself and Anthony DiVincenzo. What sort of strategy does he try to make work here at Spa?
And this is the pit exit for Alex Lidback. Quite a tight pit exit actually around here. We're not using the full layout right down the other side of the hill, right down into the historic pit lane. That's probably for better, really. That's even more of a difficult corner to make in these kind of cars. There's Carmichael, just in behind Lidback, so shows the recovery that he's made to be a lot further up the field and maybe knocking on the door of a top 10, maybe top 5 again by the end of the day. Is Block now bringing himself through the final corners. I wonder just how long he's going to leave this now and just where he's going to be in relation to Schomer, but 20 seconds is the magic number. At least Block knows the sort of pit lane time that he's going to be looking for at this pit stop whenever he's going to take it.
Yeah, now just on paper, he will have a slightly shorter stop just because he doesn't have to fill that car with nearly as much gas. Or maybe does he? I mean, he was running in the coattails for a while, so he may be able to shave quite a decent amount of time off as a result of this pit cycle. Let's keep eyes on this 389 car as he stays out for another lap. Intriguing call there from Jeffrey Block. Wants to hold out there on the racetrack, run some more laps, and we'll see what he can do. Ed Trippett going to be able to jump his way up into P2 as Anthony DiVincenzo has made that call to come down pit lane in the 420 machine. So still seeing a sprinkling, a smattering, if you would, of racers making that call to come down pit lane. Had about 4 or 5 last time by. Let's see if we maybe go up on that number on this lap of the race. Now officially past a halfway mark as well, coming up to the final 25 minutes of the season opener. But we'll have to see if anybody else is going to make that call to join DiVincenzo's contact into the chicane.
That is big contact. Jonathan Sesportas goes way too late on the brakes and hits the driver in front. We've seen it time and again tonight in the bus stop. Last night it was on the way out of the bus stop chicane where the problems were lying, just as you're getting back on the power. But tonight it's the braking, the lockups that are really causing problems. 12.7 seconds in the pit stop for James Lugo. I've got to say, as more of these pit stops happen and that pit stop for Schomer begins to put into perspective, I do feel like Bailey James Schomer has spent a bit too long in pit lane, and if Jeffrey Block has done this correctly, then could be leading by some margin at the end of this.
Yeah, so Jeffrey Block, he may have been able to play this race fantastically, not really pushing the issue too much, but pushing Bailey James Schomer to push that car, burn a lot of gas, have to come down pit lane, and either there's two ways this could be shaking out here, you, and well, there's many more different ways, but you know, rule of twos or rule of threes for convenience, I guess is what they say. But Bailey James Schomer, either he took too much fuel in that pit stop and will be just way too comfortable to make it to the end of this race. When it comes to situations like this, when you have to worry about how much fuel you put in your car, for that competitive edge, you need to be just a little bit wary about whether or not you can make it to the end of this race. Maybe lean on the cautious side here at Spa, considering the fact the track is so long. If you start sputtering heading down into turn 1 on that last lap, you're really going to be in for a world of hurt, as we see. That's the moment down into that chicane that we were keeping tabs on a few moments ago. But no, there's two ways that this could work. Either Schomer spent too long down pit lane and has enough gas to drive all the way to Timbuktu, or the fact that he had to burn so much fuel punching that hole in the air pretty much all throughout this race that we'll just see Jeffrey Block be able to go much longer on this first stint, do that pit stop well later, and probably just come out with a huge gap. We'll just have to see how things are going to work out. Right now, we're just speculating. The only people who know the fuel numbers that these drivers have are the drivers themselves.
David Suntry with a slightly bizarre crash. Inside wall rather, at the first corner. After just finding the gravel out there. Jack Stevenson, who started from the pit lane in this race, out there and making up positions into the top 20, but slightly held back by this spin out of the bus stop. That's more like what we were seeing last night. Saw quite a lot of those. This time around, it's on the way in. How weird two races can be so different, just 24 hours apart. John Kaplan up to 11th, then of James Lego. Those two have, well, one stopped, one hasn't. Lego has stopped and has actually taken on the shortest stop of anybody who's likely to go to the end from this point, with 22 minutes to go. Whereas Kaplan hasn't been in at all and maybe benefiting in this particular situation with lower fuel. And that is the advantage of staying out here, and probably why Jeffrey Block is still going.
Yeah, I wonder if Jeffrey Block, during that first stint, whether or not he was doing any sort of major fuel saving down to the turns. Was he doing a little bit of lifting and coasting through the braking zone, just trying to earn a little bit of a gap out? Is he doing a little bit of fuel saving right now, or is Jeffrey Block just driving at 10/10 and being able to enjoy the draft off of that car of Bailey James Schomer earlier on in this event? I mean, I say this as someone who was never very good in arts class, and you won't want to hear about the grades that I got in geometry. But if you have eyes, you can see the fact that the Porsche Cup car, rather big race cars, so you're punching a big hole in the air. So if you're in that draft, especially around a track like this where you spend so much of the lap flat out, you can eke out a pretty significant fuel advantage. Not even by doing anything special. You can just lift off into the turns, let that car tow you along, and you can come out of it smelling good. So let's just keep tabs on the fuel strategy between those former front two.
Lego looks down the inside of Kaplan there very closely, and Les Carmichael will try and dispatch of both of these now because he's not far away at all. Looking down the inside again through Piff Paff. And next in line is Lidback again. There you can see who's stopped, who hasn't. Quite helpful at this stage in the race because it's about half and half throughout the field. But Kaplan at the front of the group has not yet stopped, and here comes James Lego trying to get past. Oh, and on the way towards Blanchemont, looking down the inside. Quite an extravagant move to the inside, but he's going to get it done surely. And Kaplan just breathes off the throttle to let that happen. Oh, and Lego goes wide anyway. Here comes Carmichael. Will step into the chaos here and maybe take another place into the bus stop chicane. Doesn't look like that's going to happen quite on this occasion, and Lego goes way too late on the brakes. Kaplan pits to get out of it, and I don't blame him at all. And that was not quite the line that James Lego really needed. Surely Les Carmichael's going to get through pretty quickly there.
Yeah, I think this battle may get slightly complicated as Dave Jones heads his way out of pit lane right now, right in front of James Lego and Les Carmichael. You can see Alex Lidback involved in that battling as well. If Dave Jones has a slightly poor run heading off through this opening half a lap as he comes out of pit lane, we may end up seeing a convergence of all four of these cars duking it out for only one spot inside the top 10. And yet again, I've mentioned this a lot throughout this show, but there's a lot of truth said in as we see Santry with a huge snap heading off through the Fagnes section. Tough moment for him down into that turn. That was into turn 12 when he had that swapperoo, as here's another moment for Ben Whitehurst. Big lockup down into the chicane. Lots of lockups thus far here tonight. We've seen more here than I think we probably saw all of last week, if I'm being completely honest, you. And I mean, during last week's shows, we didn't really see too many lockups. Here, on the other hand, here tonight, we have seen many a racer turn their front tires into rectangles.
Yeah, and yesterday as well. Certainly more than yesterday, as Jeffrey Block comes into the pit lane. Now, let's see. This is the crucial moment of the race, the defining moment in this race. 18.5 minutes remaining, just as somebody else is leaving, actually, out of the pit lane. That's pretty awkward, as Block makes his way now towards the very end of pit lane. He'll have the second pit box, second from the end, because he qualified there. And Trippett will just be able to park right behind him here, so he'll have a clear sight on the way in now of his pit stop as well. One of the season favourites, Ed Trippett. Rather gingerly makes his way into the pit lane, actually, the pit box. As Block now ticks over 13 seconds. 14 it is. Stromer did 20 in the box. This is going to be a long, long way in front for Jeffrey Block. I thought it was going to be a bit of a gap, and there it proves to be. Stromer is going to come through in the background in a moment, and there are the headlights, I think, in the background. But it's 9 seconds, more than 9 seconds. Jeffrey Block is leading this race by some way.
Yeah, and what a masterful strategy call from Jeffrey Block. We're thinking, is he going to try and win this race? When we saw that he wasn't really given too much of a challenge to that 522 machine right up in front of him all throughout that first stint. He was playing the long game. That's exactly what he did. And hey, if he went for those moves, and all that drama through the pit cycle, he may have come out with a slightly bigger lead, but an 8.5 second gap is still a comfortable margin for Jeffrey Block with only 17 minutes left to go on the clock. I'm gonna have to try and work out how it's all going to work out in terms of what sort of time that Bailey James Schomer would have to gain, but it would have to be some pretty big bites out of that gap that Bailey James would have to take lap after lap. So frankly, at this point for Jeffrey Block, it's looking pretty all right. Certainly not 100% comfortable. You can't cruise to the end of this race, but you're feeling pretty all right.
Absolutely. Well, with 16.5 minutes to go, of course, one last time tonight, we'll remind you that we're delighted to have Princess Cruises on board as the 2025 PCA title sponsor. As the official cruise vacation partner of the Porsche Club of America Sim Racing Series, they provide exclusive offers, including world-leading itineraries across a fleet of 16 elegant ships, sailing to more than 330 global destinations. Reach out to the PCA concierge team to book your next adventure today by calling 833-679-2188. Well, 16 minutes to go, and Johan Nye leads at the moment, but that will soon change when he and Robert Gallage come into pit lane along with Chris Jankovic as well. After that, the field will be completed in a sense, and we'll have the field that we're maybe going to keep to the end of the race. But there goes Knight into the pit lane. Just under 45 minutes in, and Gallage in as well. So this moment seems like the limit. A good marker for next week and the weeks to come, Ron, about the length of these stints. This is one of the few first-year circuits, I would say. So this might be a bit of a low estimate compared to some of the other tracks we're going to get.
And as we look ahead at the season that lies ahead from this championship as we get to the end of 2025, you look at the tracks coming up: Watkins Glen, Indianapolis, Laguna Seca, Aragon, Zolder, and VIR. I think VIR probably going to be the closest when it comes to absolute gas guzzler races. But outside of that, I mean, you look at Aragon, that was a track that Mr. Joe Peak and I really singled out last week on these shows as being a rather intriguing round to this championship. I think in my entire time doing iRacing broadcasting, I think I've only done one ever show around Aragon. May have been a second. Actually, I don't even think it was a second. I think I swapped that and Navarra, but still, I think one broadcast I've ever done at Aragon in my entire time doing iRacing shows. Haven't done one thus far this year, which is really saying something because I think this is my 301st broadcast of the year. Aragon, not a track that gets a lot of use, but that motorcycle layout, probably going to be a lot of lifting around there, a lot of braking, and probably ample opportunity for those racers to do some heavy fuel saving.
Yeah, I think it is an odd circuit for most, I would say. I think even Europeans, to be honest, would slightly frown at that circuit. But given this is the Porsche Club of America, we're going to have even less experienced drivers around there, I would say, in terms of track layout knowledge. Maybe it's going to be more heightened there than at any other venue we go to this season, because there's an assortment of American circuits like the Watkins Glen, Indianapolis, Laguna Seca and VIR rounds, but even the other Europeans like this one and Zolder will be more well known worldwide than Motorland Aragon, which really outside of Southern Europe is pretty unfamiliar to most around the world. So going to be a very fun round, and they'll be very thankful that one's not in summer, I can tell you. That is a very, very warm place of Europe, that's for sure. And the fact that we'll be going there in November, or October I think it is actually, it will be a very big relief to everybody participating. There's Chris Jankovic getting a black flag, so only one lap after the stop. Jankovic is going to be in again, and that's from 12th place. It's been a good drive back through the field, unfortunately, for 009. That's going to run away now.
Yeah, that's going to be a huge kick in the shins for him. Going to drop down like a stone thrown into a pond as a result of that moment. I saw him involved in some drama a little bit earlier on. I guess that's unfortunately caught up with him. I was just going to say, though, kind of on the subject of the schedule discussion, I had a glaring omission when I was talking about how Indianapolis and VIR were probably the exact same distance away from where I am, and probably the closest. I think I am roughly in the midpoint between not only Indianapolis and VIR, but I think Watkins Glen in the midst of all that as well, because I know Watkins Glen is about a 6.5-hour drive away from where I am. Indianapolis, that's a full day's drive. I think that's probably closer to like 10.5 hours, and VIR, I've never been that far down south in a car, so I think I'm like roughly in the midpoint between those three. So I guess I'll have 3 hometown-ish races from this season, but an overall amazing schedule to look forward to from this. I'm definitely not just saying that because I'm the American here.
You should explain that you live in Pennsylvania, which is why that is the case, because maybe not everybody knows that. But anyway, I would say Watkins Glen probably closer, isn't it? Indianapolis seems like a very long way away. To me.
Yeah, I would say Watkins Glen is probably the closest. See, my itty bitty pea brain that I have for these broadcasts, I was thinking, like, you know, Indianapolis feels closer just because I've been there a handful of times before. I used to go out to the SECA Solo Nationals down in Lincoln, Nebraska, pretty much this time every single year for decent amount of the past decade, and sometimes on the way back we would stop off at Indianapolis and just kind of enjoy there. I'm huge into IndyCar, so that was always like, oh man, I'm going to Disney World, this is fantastic. So I think that's maybe what's going on there. It's like, oh, Indianapolis, I've been there before, that's such a short drive, and plus on that trip going from Philadelphia all the way out to Lincoln, Nebraska, which is going from the hustle and bustle of the city to going to a state that, with all due respect, I love the Midwest, I love Nebraska. That state is 50% dust and 50% bowl. So the Indianapolis to Philly trip on the way back felt a bit shorter than my idea of going up to Watkins Glen, because I've never been there yet. Keyword being I nearly ended up racing a little bit farther up the Finger Lake that Watkins Glen is right at the bottom of, but I never actually did that back when I was still in my karts. So I think you are correct there, Ewan, that Watkins Glen is closer. See, it's great. I'm teaching you new geography about the United States.
I know. It's I learned something almost every broadcast about the geography of America, thanks to this series. Mostly used to be the regions that used to completely baffle me, that are now becoming a little bit more recognised to me. I'm understanding them a little bit more. I can have a guess where Jeffrey Block might be from, given his region, that's for sure. But there you go. Anyway, a bit of geography for you. Get it all here. Less than 10 minutes to go of this race, and Alex Lidback is on the defensive again. It feels like that's been a theme throughout the hour as James Lego attacks on the way towards Lecombe. This is the battle for the highest position in the field, by the way. And Lidback able to comfortably stay in front this time round. 9 minutes to go. Jeffrey Block is either about to start 3 or 4 laps to go. Going to be pretty close again, like it was last night. And we'll see just how much that Alex Lidback has to defend with.
You'll have to see what sort of defensive games these drivers decide to play as we get a little bit farther along in this race. The drift from these cars not so strong that it is indefendable whenever you head off through a long flat out place around this track, as that's Jack Stevenson with a spin heading off through the Fagnes section, goes off into the gravel, spins a little bit more back onto it. I will say though, Ewan, kind of talking about the gravel, I was expecting parts of this racetrack to look like a rally special stage. Not seeing that. It's rather smooth, so well done to iRacing for working on that. And as we're now officially getting up to the start of season 4. I guess we're in the season 4 build, but it hasn't officially started yet on iRacing, but we're close enough to it whereby I will mark it off as that. iRacing doing amazing work over the past couple of seasons and the past couple of years to work on those off-track physics, whether it be changing the amount of grip that you have on the grass so it wasn't just green ice, all the way up to now where you can bring that gravel out there on the racetrack. They've refined it over time. Always love to see it, but now we love to see this, a battle between your at one point race leader of Schomer and another at one point race leader, that being the 444 of Ed Trippett.
Yeah, really close Trippett now to Schomer. And this is why the pit stops matter so much in these races. Not only the seconds that you lose, but the sort of momentum that you lose and the battles you can get drawn into that you weren't previously. This is the problem for Schomer now on the defence from another driver. Ed Trippett, though, I don't think close enough to really have a go in towards Lecombe this time. It's going to need to be even closer than that. And don't forget, that was with a mistake contributing to that run there.
Yes, a small little trip up can really be detrimental to these racers in these tight-knit battles. As we look now, that's Thomas Doherty battling with John Kaplan. That's a battle for lucky number P13 out there on the racetrack. Both of these racers have had their fair share of drama up to this point in the opening round of the championship. But as we're now in the final 7 minutes, I think they're looking to end it with some form of stride as we jump back against this battle for second between Bailey James Schomer and Ed Trippett. Will also raise the gap between themselves and Jeffrey Block has closed up somewhat. About 3 seconds it's closed up ever since those pit cycles, and that's a big lockup from Schomer, and into P2 goes Trippett.
Well, we've seen it time and again here over the last 2 days, actually, into Piff Paff. That braking zone actually pretty difficult to spot as you're trying to sort of trail brake your way in there. It can be very difficult, and Schomer there makes an error. Ed Trippett is not going to pass up that opportunity at all. He actually took his drop round from race number 1 last season on his way to 5th place in the standings. Didn't finish on the podium once, but is comfortably on it right now, and 2nd place pretty comfortably as well after making that pass. Now, though, the roles will be reversed. It will be 3 laps to go, by the way, as they've still got 6 minutes left, and so Trippett has got a lot of defending potentially to do before the finish here.
Yeah, a whole lot of defending that you've got to do. Drive the widest Porsche Cup car that you can, and keep your fingers crossed that you can hold on to that spot again. In a 7-round championship like this, you need to capitalize on every single opportunity. So as much as it's still going to be intense with this battling, these racers have to think about, okay, as much as it would be good to get a P2, I'm still pretty much guaranteed a podium if I just hold on to this spot. So do you really try and risk it at the end of this race? A that silver may look better than bronze in your trophy cabinet, but at the same time, would it look better than a giant repair check that some of these racers may have to pay if they wreck their car? That's the thing that these racers have to think of. But right now, Schomer's thinking of one thing, and that is P2.
Looking to regain that place again on Trippett, who defends sternly on the inside line, and Schomer's not going to get round there. In fact, goes very deep into the Leconte chicane and drops all the way back. Well, that could be a race-ending gap as far as this battle for second is concerned, as Ed Trippett opens out 2 seconds. Schomer goes too deep in the braking zone again. We see trouble on the brakes here tonight in the challenge class. And Trippett there might well have just been given a gap that he can hold now to the finish.
Yeah, so Trippett certainly feeling a lot comfortable than he did a matter of just 45 seconds ago. Trippett now holding on to P2, just has to keep that car on the road with only about 2 laps left from this race as well, Ewan. Getting into crunch time, Jeffrey Block holding on now to a 5.7 second gap. You know, it's not the biggest gap that I've seen thus far this season here at Spa. I remember the opening round of it was a pro class last week when the winner ended up winning by, I think, 25-26 seconds. So compared to that, this is just like right on top of each other. As a DQ, a disqualification for Sean Bailey and the 999 machine. He's had a pretty wild race, but sadly has come to an end about 3.5 minutes too soon.
I don't think from memory you saw any disqualifications last night, but that's a couple now, as Jeffrey Block gets himself into the final couple of corners for the penultimate time with 3.5 minutes to go, with more than enough time for another lap before this race finishes. But Bailey joins Bruce Frobe out of this race. Thankfully, everybody else has continued on. Even Andrew McCune, actually, who's a couple of laps down here, is still going. It's been a much closer race in the challenge class as well than what we saw last night in the sport class, if you were with us. It is a much different race, that's for sure. This is the straw that broke the camel's back, as it were. A jump over the top of the hill, a slight off track, and when you look at it like that, Ron, you feel, well, that's a bit harsh, but actually he's gotten 24 incidents to get to that point, and that's what you've got to remember.
Yeah, I will say, whenever we see those replays of those disqualifications, it's never like, oh yeah, this driver picked up 17 incident points in one singular moment. It's like a small little off-track moment that puts them over the edge, and then immediately they get sent off into the shadow realm. Off the track they go, and out of this race they are sent all the way back down to the back on the scoring. There's a very odd comparison, but that's kind of what I'm known for when it comes to these broadcasts. Seeing those guys pick up a disqualification for a simple off track, it's like hanging a guy for shoplifting.
It does feel a little bit extreme, but there you go. As I say, 24 incidents to get to that point. In any case, 25 for an hour is quite a lot, even at Spa, where the off-tracks and the incidents are fairly easy to pick up. So we have a look at Ben Whitehurst. A big thanks to the drivers, by the way, over the last couple of weeks and the last 4 different splits that we've seen, who have given us their perspective, their viewpoint, their home setup. We do like to see them live alongside our pictures. So hopefully we can get some more in the coming weeks. There you go, single monitor display. Not sure what that LED business on the right-hand side is all about, but there you go. Nice and simple, Ron. It feels like the old days, that wheel strapped to desk and one single monitor, just how it used to be.
Oh man, now one day I need to show you a photo of my first ever sim rig with the wheel that I still have. I still have a Logitech G920. The thing is worn down. I've owned it since 2018, and that thing is basically hanging on by its last thread of wire. As we're about to see these racers start up the final lap, Jeffrey Block has already done that. But before I go too far off talking about my very raggedy sim rigs, I think this battle for P2 may get get a bit intense. We were thinking that it was completely done and dusted, as much as it's still 1 second gap between Ed Trippett and Bailey James Schomer. A small little trip up for Trippett, and that could result in that number 522 machine getting that job done to jump his way back up into second. So a bit of a kick in the shins from Schomer as he was holding on to the race lead for such a significant portion of that first stint, that walking away with anything less than a win will be a bit of a disappointment for him, but still a podium to get the season up and rolling. I don't think you'll have too many complaints about that one bit, but Trippett's clean as he ends his way off down the Camel straightaway for the last time in this race, looking like he's going to hold on to that P2 spot unless he has some sort of major moment all through the final few turns. And as I say that, the gap balloons out to 1.3 seconds, 1.2 and a half between himself and Bailey James Schomer. So as we see those racers run into the end of this race, I will let you know that my sim rig, it is the creakiest thing in the world. There are doors in haunted houses that creak less than my sim rig.
They do wear and tear at the end of the day. So there you go. But whatever works. And I say, I like to see the sim rigs of all these guys that they're using here tonight, and indeed throughout this Porsche Club of America Sim Racing Series season. We'll be live, by the way, every Wednesday and Thursday here on RaceSpotTV, right in the way until December. So I hope you've enjoyed tonight, and I hope you'll return next week, because the Pro and the Club class begin again at Watkins Glen, and then the Sport and Challenge class will be back the week after that on a bi-weekly series, these guys. And we'll be bringing you every one of those live here on RaceSpotTV. Combination of me, Joe, and Ron will bring you the coverage this season. As Jeffrey Block now brings his way towards the start-finish line. He was here last season, but didn't attend all the rounds and didn't score a top 5 once. Closest he got was at Portimao, when I think he finished 8th. But tonight, he has taken on new heights here, and a fantastic drive, fantastic strategy above all else. Shortest pit stop of anybody inside the top 6. And along with a consistent run, it's contributed to a race victory tonight for Jeffrey Block at Spa. The first round of the challenge class in the Porsche Club of America Sim Racing Series 14 goes to him. Ed Trippett will finish second in front of Bailey James Schomer, who led for a good portion of that race, and maybe a little bit disappointed he didn't get more out of tonight's race.
Yeah, maybe a bit of discontentment for that 522 driver, but still for Bailey James Schomer, pretty all right way to get this season up and rolling. If there's anybody that's going to be kicking himself at the end of this race, probably going to be Les Carmichael in that 912 car. Started up at the front, and that lead lasted for only a half a lap as he spun, heading off through Pouhon, and ever since then, he didn't really recover. Not sure how things worked out for him in the pit cycle, because he was running firmly inside the top 10. I think just things didn't shake out for him well at the end of this race, as he's going to be coming home in P11 unless something drastic happens between now and the end of this race. In fact, I think he has already crossed the line. Instead, though, we have this battle on screen right now for P14. It's Jonathan Sasperatus and Adam Holland. Holland with a very crumpled up race car. That Porsche Cup car, the 144 of Holland, looks like a discarded chip bag, but let's see as he heads his way off into the final chicane.
He's going to have a look here. Here's Holland. Might as well. Final corner. Last lap lunge. Quite late, but Holland's going to get that stopped nicely. A change for 14th on the final corner of the race, and Holland gets past Jonathan Sasperatus. And in the end, gets home 14th. Points available, by the way, for anyone who finishes in the top 40, i.e. anybody who finishes in these races. So every position worth points in this series. And that would have been worth 10 for Holland, so a pass well worth making down the inside there. Let's have a look then at the race results from the first round of the challenge class here in the Porsche Club of America Sim Racing Series tonight, and it's Jeffrey Block who wins by 5 seconds in the end. Ed Trippett holds on for Bailey James Schomer on the podium, with Anthony DiVincenzo and Johan Nye rounding out the top 5. Vernon Messer recovered to 6th after not setting a qualifying time ahead of Robert Gallis, Dave Jones in 8th, then Alex Lidback and James Lego rounding out the top 10. 11th went to Les Carmichael, who dropped down early and recovered as well. Chris Drankovic finished in 12th despite a late black flag. John Kaplan just ahead of the battle between Holland and Sasperatus we saw at the end there. Andrew Hillman finished 16th ahead of Ben Whitehurst, Thomas Dougherty and David Suntree, the last drivers on the lead lap. Jack Stevenson 1 lap down in the end in 20th place. Andy McCune and Sean Bailey finished 2 laps down, although Bailey was disqualified alongside Bruce Froby, who was also disqualified as well, although much earlier in the race, it must be said. Let's work our way the wrong way up the podium, shall we, this time round, because we're still waiting for Jeffrey Block, and start with 3rd place, Bailey James Schomer, who can now join us now. Bailey James, welcome in. Good to have you with us. Can you hear us, and have we got you?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Excellent news. How was that race for you? I mean, you were leading for a long time, but end up 3rd. Are you disappointed or pleased?
A little bit of both. I mean, I'm still very excited that this was my first race in PCA sim racing. But yeah, I'm definitely disappointed that I lost the lead there. Had a pretty long pit stop and botched a couple corners. But it's all learning experience, and I look forward to the rest of the season.
Well, this round, of course, will give you a lot of information, especially on that pit stop that you can take forward now into the rest of the races. Just what was it that caused you to have such a long stop compared to some of the others?
I think it's just the learning process, still figuring out exactly how to calculate, how many laps I need left with the fuel. And I just messed it up and put too much in and wasn't able to get out of the box in time.
Well, it's still a great result, despite that slightly handicapping you. You're still finishing 3rd place tonight. Congratulations on that. And thanks for coming to chat to us at the end too.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks very much. That is Bailey James Schomer, who finishes in 3rd place tonight. I'll continue about working my way the wrong way up and speak to Ed Trippett next, who finishes 2nd tonight. Ed, welcome in. Good to have you with us, and congrats on 2nd tonight. A late pass on Schomer and a fend off as well. Talk us through those late laps and that late battle.
Yeah, thanks first of all for you guys doing everything you do. PCA and this is my first podium in a long time. Really excited about this. Yeah, I just kept the foot down. I had that early spin there through the bus. Yeah. Calm down, just put my foot into it and just straight. I caught up and he made a bobble. Simple for him, he made a bobble. Once he made that bobble, I was able to get by, hit my points, just hit my marks and not get carried. Really excited about how it all worked out, and I couldn't be happier.
How are you looking at this season in terms of your ambitions? Because you're one of the remaining drivers who was here last season, earlier on in 2025, and you finished in the top 5. Some of the guys ahead of you have now left to the sport class. So are you seeing yourself as one of the favourites?
Well, I hope to be consistent. I did really good. Finished anywhere between 4th and 9th. And so if I can finish in the top 5 consistently, which is what I'm hoping to do, I might be in contention this year, but better than 4th in the season series. And I should like to do a little bit better than that this year.
Well, congratulations tonight on 2nd, Ed, and thanks for chatting to us at the end as well. Thanks very much. That's Ed Trippett, who finishes in 2nd place tonight in the challenge class, just behind Jeff Block, who ends up winning the race tonight. Jeff, welcome in. Congratulations on opening night, opening win for you this season in the challenge class. Tell us how you're feeling at the end of that one.
It's pretty great. That's my first win ever. And I just want to thank all the PCA instructors. They've been great, the sim instructors and Princess Cruises.
I mean, tell us how you managed it in that race. The first half of the race was very much about a battle between yourself and Bailey James Schomer, and the second half was designed by that pit strategy that seemed to work out really well from you. Which part was more important? Was it the pit stop that got you out in front, or the battles early on in the race to battle your way through into that position in the first place?
I think it was starting out, I was able to follow him, get settled in nicely. Sorry, I got a puppy barking in the background here. Got settled in good, and then when he pitted, I was able to cut it loose a little bit and just drive safe and keep it on the track.
Well, thank goodness the dog didn't disrupt your run, and it's only doing so now. Congrats, Jeff, on winning tonight, and thanks for chatting to us at the end as well.
Thank you very much. Sorry, the puppy's name is the Stig, so he's kind of crazy.
It's very fitting. I barely heard it, so it's fine. Jeff Block, thanks very much. Race winner tonight from the challenge class in the Porsche Club of America Sim Racing Series 14, as we've kicked off here tonight. 2 weeks' time, you'll see this series again at Watkins Glen, 8:30 p.m. Eastern, when we're starting all of our broadcasts this season. And Ron, we've had 4 great races from Spa to set us up very nicely in all 4 of our divisions.
Yeah, 4 very distinct and very different races, but still entertaining, exciting, and awesome to cover nonetheless. Watkins Glen, though, as we head off in the first of a decent amounts of classic American road courses from this season in the PCA world. Going to be super, super exciting. I adore Watkins Glen. I think it's going to be some fun. Going to see some drivers eating the curbs like their cereal for breakfast, and we're also going to see some racers throw haymakers at each other as well. I'm really looking forward to keeping this season up and rolling when this series visits Watkins Glen in just 2 weeks' time.
Well, it's a bit of pleasure to be along for this week's Porsche Club of America Sim Racing Series rounds, the Sport and Challenge class. Myself, thanks for being alongside me, Ron Mans, alongside myself, Una Leary, and Romero Augustin Cisneros with you tonight on RaceSpotTV. As I mentioned, we'll be here pretty much every Wednesday and Thursday until early December when this season finally completes. It's going to be a great 14 weeks, and we've started off here with a couple of fantastic races at Spa. Join us again next week when the Pro Class will be getting underway on Wednesday night from Watkins Glen. Very much hope you can to see them, but from all of us here from Spa, for now, it's goodbye.